Hi everybody and welcome back to this drum kit tutorial. If you've been following along, you will have created all your drums and your cymbals. In the last episode we created all our hardware and we're now ready to export these into Unity. So join me and let's get these going. Let's jump straight in and let's take out our bass drum. So we've got our bass drum here and we're just going to export these as FBX as separate drums, which will give us a bit of freedom inside Unity to be able to move those around if we want, make them bigger, make them smaller, add in new drums, completely a bit more flexible than just exporting the drum kit as a whole if we were to set it up in Blender. So to export these, select the object you want. We're just going to press Ctrl A before we export, and that sets the scales to 1 and it sets the rotation to zeros as well. So let's file, export as FBX, and I've got a shortcut here into my drum kit, and we'll just call these as we are exporting them. So bass drum for this. Oh, I completely forgot to do something, so I better show you what I've done there. So if we look here, you can see the export here for the bass drum FBX is 2.92 megabytes, which is obviously a little bit too large for such a short, small mesh, and that's because I've just exported everything. So before you export an FBX, if you want to, you need to just export your selected object. So tick the selected objects box and apply the scale as well. So under there does actually say apply scale. Not sure if it'll show when I hover over. No, I don't. Well, that says apply scale. So you want to select FBX unit scale, and that uses 1 unit is 1 meter, providing you've applied your rotation and scale, obviously. And let's just apply that to the drum kit. So now when we look at our export again, you can see the drum kit is actually 589 kilobytes, which is much more reasonable than the 2. So we've done that one. Let's hide that away. I tend to hide them away after I've done them. The floor tom, we know we've got a floor tom stand, so let's bring that in as well. And we're going to export these, but leaving these as individual objects, and that will allow us to, if once we're inside Unity we actually want this to be up here, we can move these around at the same time. So we just need to hold down Shift to select all these objects. So I'm just going to shift click on here. That will have selected everything, and then File, Export, FBX, and let's call this floor tom. And each of those objects will be a child object of the floor tom. Selected objects, unit scale, export, and let's hide that one away. Let's take our rack tom. Now the rack tom, we're not going to have any stands or connections or anything. This is just attached as part of the drum kit, so we can export this as its own individual object. And rack tom small. Actually, that was large. Let's export that again. Export our actual small one now. We've got this nicely named, so I can just double click. And next let's do our snare drum, which we've got a snare drum stand. So let's shift click on all of these. File, export, and oops, Control there. Snare drum. And what have we got next? Cymbals. So let's get our cymbal stand and our cymbal. Select all these objects. And we should have a hi-hat stand in here as well, so let's select all those, and our 2 hi-hats. that's it, we're ready to go. We're going to create all the materials for these inside Unity. So if I jump over, I've got the project ready to go, and that's just imported all these into our models directory. So these are all ready to go, and we can just drag, drop and place these on. So let's start with our, if you've followed along in my other tutorials, you will have created this basement environment as well as part of that tutorial. If you haven't followed that, then find that in my videos, follow along, and you can build this environment too. Similarly, I do make it available for download, so if you don't want to model it yourself, you can just download it. Let's bring in our bass drum, and you can see when it exports from Blender, it brings in some materials and it sets the sort of defaults, but you can't edit any of these materials. So what we want to do is create materials to replace each of those. So inside our materials file, I'm just going to create a new folder called drum kit materials, and we're just going to create some standard materials. So we need our, so in create and material, and we need one for our shell. So let's create a shell, and I'll continue to use this sort of blue colour. You can have whatever you want for yours, and we probably want this to be quite shiny, so I'm just going to move that up, and then if we drag and drop that on, you can see it's applied that material, and you can adjust these however you want. We'll need a chrome material, so let's create a new material called chrome, and let's turn the smoothness right up, and I'll pick just a slightly grey material. Let's drag that on and see what that looks like, and let's turn our metallic up, and this is just really play around until you get the sort of look that you want. I think that's a bit dark, so let me just brighten that up. That looks fine, and you can see it's highly reflective. Let's create a new material. Oops, not a lens flare, don't need one of those. Let's create a new material for our rim, and we'll use a black colour. I'll have it quite shiny. Drop that on, create a new material for our skin, and we'll make this a slightly off yellow, off white colour, which you can adjust to be whatever you want, and I don't want this to be super shiny. And that's it, that's our bass drum ready to go. Now once I've created this and I've applied all the materials, I normally create a prefab for these, which is just a case of dragging and drop that in, and then this is already got everything assigned then, and you can just bring this out as many times as you want. And if you were to adjust one of these, let's say for some reason you add in a cube, for whatever reason you may want to add a cube in here, and then if we select our bass drum and press apply, you can see it does that to all our other prefabs. So it's a very brief look at prefabs, but very useful. It's creating multiples of the same object. We'll just delete our cube here, and let's continue. Let's bring in our next one. So next we've got our symbol, and we need to create a few extra materials for this one. So drum kit materials, let's create a rubber material, which we'll just have as black and not very smooth. Let's drag that onto there and onto the feet. The chrome we can add onto our stand, so I'm just going to move closer so I can actually see. And we need that's a little bit off center, isn't it? So I'm just going to adjust that. And we need a symbol material, so I'm just going to duplicate our chrome. Can't duplicate in there. Can I shift D? Oops. Select shift D, control D. Control D will duplicate our chrome material there, and it won't let me rename it now. Symbol. And I've done that just so I can select I guess let's go for a sort of goldy colour, and that is super smooth. We probably do with creating some kind of normal map for that at some point, but let's just go with this for now. That's our symbol done. I'll drop that into Prefabs. And next we've got our floor tom, and we should have all the materials we need for this, so it's just a case of dragging and dropping these on. So assign the chrome, and you can make these whatever colours you want. It's going to be completely down to you. It's a nice thing, once we've done this we can actually just quickly change the entire colour of the drum kit very easily. Rim, and we've done chrome shell and skin. Let's drag that into our prefabs. What's next? Hi-hat. So again, we should have all the materials we need for this, so it's just a case of dragging and dropping. So symbol, symbol, chrome, that's our hi-hat completed. Let's just bring these two out. Rim, rim. Let's do the chrome, let's do the shell, and the skin. And I think we've only got one left now. Let's drop these again into the prefabs. And just our snare drum left. And you can see we're getting all the pieces now where we can actually start to put these things together. I think if we can't do that. I was just thinking if we highlight all these objects we can put the chrome material on, but it shares material, so we can't actually do that. So we'll have to just keep doing it how we've been doing, which is not exactly difficult. It's just a case of dragging and dropping a lot. And there we go, that's everything ready to go for our drum kit. And what's nice now, once you've got these very simple materials set up, is you can just change the colour very easily. So if you decide you want to play on a bright red drum kit today, it's very easy, and pretty much just any colour that you want is quite easy to set up. You can just adjust these materials until you're happy with them and they match sort of what you want. So we've got all our items there. Let's create a new empty. I'm just going to set the location for this to 0, and let's rename this drum kit. So what we want to do now is place all these items into the correct positioning. So if we take our drum kit and our bass drum, and let's drop that into there. I'm just going to 0 this and -90, and then let's raise this above the floor. I'm just going to eyeball this, and then we can check how it feels once we're inside VR. Let's move our floor tom. Might just do this in top view. Now everybody sets their kits up differently, so you can use your own personal preference with a lot of this and just put them where you think is right. Once we're set up and running, it's actually really easy to change these, so you can do whatever you want with yours. I think that's about right. Looks fine. Let's bring our snare drum in. And our hi-hat, which is possible that it's a little bit low, that hi-hat. You can see it's coming into the snare and we need to really lift that up. And let's move these across. do this in side view. I want these the tops of these drums to be in the same position, so I'm just going to position these in orthographic mode. If you use orthographic mode, it sort of flattens the image so you can see the right angles. If you use perspective mode, you can see this sort of looks like it's below there, whereas actually it's in the same level, so you might end up doing this. And then if you go into this view, you can see it's clearly above, so you want to use orthographic mode for positioning like this. And normally these drums are rotated towards you a little bit, so I'm just going to adjust this rotation. Is it the Y? Nope. Z? Nope. So let's bring up this. It looks like it's the it was the X rotation, so I'm just going to rotate this round until visually it looks around right. Okay, so we've got our entire drum kit. I forgot to put these in there. So now everything is roughly placed. I'm just going to move this back to where we're actually going to be playing that drum kit, which was just underneath this sort of light is really where we want to be sitting and playing. And if I jump into VR now, we can actually have a quick look at what some of this stuff looks like. Let me just make this bigger so you can see what I'm seeing. Okay, so it's a little bit offset for where I'm actually sat. Visually it looks a little bit small, but it should all be to scale, so it might just be a case of moving things around until we are happy. I need to raise that cymbal up, but the drum kit itself actually looks quite nice. So let's just raise that hi-hat up and that cymbal up a little bit, and then I think we can be happy with that. So this is one of the reasons why we kept these objects separate, so we can actually adjust them individual. So I'm just going to move the cymbals just above there, sorry, the hi-hat just above there, and then I can adjust all these objects as well. So we can move this up and we should be able to just scale here. And you can see we've managed to move that up without having to remodel and re-export everything. You could of course go back into Blender and adjust that, but if you were to take this further, you would probably want to make some of these things adaptable to each of your players. Because we're only making this for ourselves, we don't need to worry too much about other players and making this configurable and setting up, unless that's obviously what you're going for, in which case you can make all these adjustable inside Unity by some kind of settings or something. We're just going to be going with a static drum kit. I'm just going to move these hi-hats around here a little bit so that when we're playing this should be easier to connect to. And let's give that another check. If I take maximise on play, you'll be able to see what I'm looking at. I'm just going to slide over here. I'm not sure if you can still see me, but I'm just going to slide over here so I'm more in position. And everything actually looks great inside there. All these materials look quite good. I don't think we need to change anything on there. And that's it. That's our drum kit moved over. Very easy to bring it into Unity there. I'm glad you could join me on this final one for here. There'll probably be another video where we'll create a stool that we can actually sit on, and we'll create a couple of drumsticks as well, because we're going to need those to actually play the drums. And we're nearly finished with all the modelling side of this project. and we'll be able to actually get on and start to play the drums. So thank you very much for joining me up until this point. I hope to see you again in the future episodes. And like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you soon. Thank you very much.